Hello and welcome to Turn Zero Podcast, hosted by the Magic Engineers with apparently a minor in board gaming.
I prefer the board game engineers.
Well, we can work at the title. The point is that today this is the first new episode of a new era, so to speak. We're talking board games today. Some of our favorites, why we like them, what ones we can recommend, all that good stuff. We've gotten into the board game bug quite a bit over the last few times we've hung out, so it's cost us less money than Magic, mercifully.
Somehow.
That's not true. I just bought Twilight Imperium. That is not true.
No, that is true. Lifetime, you've spent less on board games than you have on Magic. Case closed.
Yes, but I can sell the Magic cards theoretically.
You could also sell the board games. Nothing's stopping you from doing that either.
For not as much as I got it for.
You'll be fine. Anyways, so we're in just spitball, kind of lose structure here, talk about some games that we like, fun things, quibbles, interesting stories, just the basics. Won't go too long, I hope, but we'll see what happens. So why don't we start us off here with a discussion about, all right, let's just get into it. Arkham Horror, the Arkham horror games in general by Fantasy Flight. There are three that we've played a lot of. Arkham Horror obviously is the base one. That's kind of the original. We got introduced to it through Eldritch Horror, and we also played a lot of Mansions of Madness. So we've dived into the Cthulhu setting pretty deep with all three of those games.
Yeah, this set of games by Fantasy Flight, they are a time, especially. It really depends on who you're playing with as to the quality of the game, like of the session itself. Because if you have, in my opinion, if you have people that are like really into the game and like try to like, do the role play or, do any sort of like silly stuff to make the game at least fun, it's a great time, regardless of the outcome. Because to be like completely upfront frank with you, if you're going to play this game, you are going to be frustrated because these games are heavily reliant on dice rolls, and they're specifically reliant on getting certain dice rolls, because in at least Eldritch Horror and in Arkham Horror, you need to roll a 5 or a 6 to get what is called a success.
Mm-hmm.
In Mansions of Madness, you just need to roll a certain symbol. And all of the game requires you to either have multiple successes or have a variety of items to be able to like function through it. And it's fun. Like, it's kind of like a brain teaser trying to figure out the little mystery behind everything. But in the end, you're going to fail more often than you're going to succeed. Unless you're my fiance, in which case you are extremely lucky all the time.
She is uncommonly lucky. It's very strange.
It is abhorrent how lucky she is. But I remember the first time I played this game, I couldn't get out of Tunguska.
Literally couldn't leave.
Yeah,
I moved one space away, got sick, and died.
Yeah. I will say, out of all three of those games, Mansions of Madness is my personal favorite.
absolutely.
The scenarios, the scenarios to put together are interesting. You actually have to think for a good chunk of them, because some of them, because it's very mystery based, so there's a lot of like puzzle solving and presumption and all that kind of guesswork that comes into the investigative setting, and it feels very good to play. It's very
really
simple.
Really puts you in like kind of like the feet of the main characters of the H.P. Lovecraft stories.
Yeah,
because you are the investigative team that's there to try to stop some otherworldly horror from destroying the world, basically.
Yeah.
Most times.
I'll be honest with you, I don't like Eldritch Horror very much.
I understand.
Yeah, it's not only is it random, but it also just doesn't have enough variability for me. It's a little too light on components and stuff. Arkham Horror is somewhere in the middle.
That expansion really made it interesting. It made us lose quicker, but it was interesting.
I don't know if it was interesting so much it was infuriating.
Yeah. So Eldritch Horror is like, if you're getting into the series and you're not sure if you really want to like fully dive into the whole series as a whole, it's probably the cheapest option out of them all. Eldritch Horror is definitely the most accessible when it comes to getting into it too, because it's pretty much the same. Like you're when you play the game, you're not getting like a variety of story like changing elements like you do with Mansions. With Mansions of Madness, it's run by an app on your phone, and the amount of variation that you get is usually enough that you can actually play the same scenario a couple times and not have the same things happen over and over again. Generally speaking, the scenario, of course, is always going to be the same, though, because it's always based around the same story. So there's minor variations throughout, like certain characters might be evil, certain characters might be good. It really just depends, you know. And as a whole, you can have a much longer playtime experience with Mansions of Madness too, because Mansions of Madness, the scenarios vary from anywhere from 90 minutes to 8+ hours.
It's weird. The
'Cause-
8-hour ones take 90 minutes, and the 90-minute ones take 8 hours.
Yeah, so my fiance David and I sat down and played the longest scenario that's available on the app, and it was a grind. Like, we actually had to pause midway through to stop and eat and like collect our thoughts as to what was happening. And we were stressed for the majority of it. Like, and it wasn't until the very end where we were like, okay, we're actually going to win this. I lost all my sanity points, so I've got insane condition that made it to where I couldn't win with those two. But I gave up. I was like, I'm not going to win on my own because that seems cheap. We've been playing this for so long. I'm not about to just fuck them over. So I straight up was like, I'm just going to keep playing as if I'm part of the good team and we'll be okay.
Just Mansions is really fun, and I highly recommend it if you're going to buy any of those games. There's another game in that setting, Elder Sign, but it's entirely a dice game, so we would all hate it.
Yeah, anything that's completely reliant on dice luck gets very frustrating.
Yeah, you would hate Elder Sign then because it's literally just a dice game.
As for a game that isn't dice reliant, but instead is card luck reliant, we're going to talk about Pandemic, specifically the version of Pandemic called Pandemic Legacy. So, Pandemic Legacy is a game that David and I played with my fiance. Sherry has not played this game, and it's going to be an interesting time if we decide to open up the next set and introduce Sherry into this. But when it comes to this game, there's various seasons. So season 0, 1, and 2 are out right now. I don't know if there's any discussions for a season 3, but we'll see. The way this game works is, if you've ever played the base game Pandemic, season 1 plays a little bit like that to start, where you're playing the regular game of Pandemic. But after you finish each game, regardless if you win or lose, the game has a chance to change. And it's going to change in any variety of ways. And I'm not going to go into any like details as to how it changes, because it is a very campaign-driven storyline where you're kind of guessing as to what's the right action to take. So I'm not going to try to spoil it for anybody. But just know that the choices that you make throughout the game affect your next game. So unlike regular board games where after you finish the game, it's not going to affect anything, you just clean up and you move on, the choices in this game are permanent. So if you fail, that failure sticks around. So it's actually a very interesting kind of setup. And David and my fiance and I, we really, really dug into this series, and we've really enjoyed everything we played of it so far. We finished season 1 with like almost great success. Like we were almost the top rank, I want to say.
So we were very close.
We were very close to it, and it was a stressful time to say the least. And with the constant evolution of the game, it kept us hooked. We played through a couple months of season 0 so far,
or season 2.
Season 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, season 2. A couple months of season 2. We still need to come back and finish it, but that's a plan for another time for us, because all these other board games that come up, stuff like this. So any legacy game really in general that takes like a regular IP that we're familiar with and tries to turn it on its head, I'm a big fan of those. Those are like some of my favorite games right now, and it's extremely cooperative gameplay. So if
a little too cooperative sometimes, because I know me and Bree have definitely gotten into fights about certain actions we should be taking.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of argumenting and figuring out what's the right action to take. And you have to play as a team. Like, everyone has to cooperate together and think about it very carefully. Sometimes that can also be an impediment where you are stuck thinking and not doing. So just something to keep aware of if you decide to get this series. Highly recommend Pandemic Legacy, though. It's a fantastic playthrough.
It's great fun. Sherry, you got something on your mind? A game you want to discuss?
Yeah, I want to like. This is kind of like the first like I would say legit board game I've played with any of you guys, and a former, not a former friend, a person we knew at college, Shadows over Camelot. That's like the first real board game I've played, and every time I play it, I have a lot of fun, even if I am the trader.
Oh, I have fun, especially when I'm the trader.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, it's also fun when you're trying to like track down the trader and you're trying to like where someone's extremely suspicious of you, especially when you have to do kind of traitorous actions to pull out the traitor. Like I know I did that last time we played, where I was like,
Yep.
I'm gonna look like the traitor, but they're gonna have to believe me, and I was right.
The funny part is that whenever we play this game, David is usually the traitor.
I don't know
Yeah,
how
but
it, I don't know how it
wasn't that
happens. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, the first time we all played that game, no, I was not the trader. I think that was somebody else. But like, ever since then, I've usually pulled the card, and I don't really understand why.
Yeah, it's uncanny how often he was the traitor.
It's very freaky.
But it's another co-op game, so it makes for a lot of interesting kind of like cooperation, but also being suspicious of each other all the time, because like your whole goal is to win together, but there's always that one thought in the back of your mind of, is this person doing this because they're a traitor, or are they just doing this because they're an idiot?
Yeah, because it's
The answer is usually yes.
Well, what's interesting is because like especially when you're doing trader gameplay, because you have to make it seem like you're trying your best, but like it's as like the when you're not the trader. Like for example, like your fiance was a trader in the last game we played a few months ago, and the reason I could tell is because the movements were inefficient. So you actually, it's kind of you watching each of your
friends.
your co-op, yeah, your friends or co-op players, and seeing like how are they moving? Are they getting like are you using their economy efficiently, or are they like not using something each time? And versus like, and then that's how I actually figured out who the trader was, by watching how people are doing this. But then also making it really suspicious, like I was the trader when I made a run on Excalibur. I basically tricked the trader into getting it right next to the award slot, and then I ran in, discarded, grabbed it, and ran out.
Yeah, that was a brilliant move. I appreciate it.
Honestly, like I think I'm not saying that won the game, but that could have definitely turned the tides.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. In case you guys couldn't tell, by the way, we've played a lot of co-ops.
Yeah,
like,
we are very...
lot of co-ops. I want to transition to something a little bit more competitively based. This is a game I recently picked up, and we played a few rounds of it last time we hung out. And it was a really good time. It was Dune Imperium.
It's the spice.
The spice must flow. Yeah,
the spice melange.
So there's another Dune board game that's way back from like the late 70s or something. That's probably more impactful for the board game sphere. Like it codifies a lot of the stuff that we kind of take for granted, like individual player powers, alliances. Like it's kind of, if you haven't looked it up, look it up. It's kind of a crazy game, and I might pick that one up next. But this is also, it's lighter, but it's still very fun because it's basically a combination between a deck building game like Dominion and a worker placement game like something like Stone Age or something like that. It's simple, but it's very satisfying, very crunchy, very strategic, and fairly easy to pick up as well. I didn't really have to do much teaching after like round one of that game, which is really nice.
Everyone kind of developed their own strategies, and we almost won if you wouldn't have happened to go all military route.
Hey, look, man, I had my out. I played to it, and I snuck it. I snuck a win. Okay, what do you want?
Yeah,
this is the Harkonnen way. All right.
Yeah. So what's also kind of fun is like kind of because each of your if you didn't know, each of your players, whether it be the Duke Leto Atreides or the Lisan Al Gaib or the Harkonnen, insert the some bass effects. Throat singing, different like you have different effects you can do depending on certain actions. Like for example, the first game that I think it was you and I, David, that played, that was just like a one-on-one when I was doing I forgot which woman character, but it was basically I could trade in gold for spice or spice for gold or something like that.
Solari for spice.
Solari, yeah, get that right.
It's been a minute. I'm trying, but I remember it's like, oh, so I played a little of that, and then I had a Duke Leto Duke Leto Atreides, and he was a completely different way to play. And then you obviously had the Harkonnens, which had its own thing that it did, and you won with it.
Yes, I did. I will say the game, as far as a flavor depiction of Dune, total fail.
Oh, I don't even know the story of the game, and I know it's
A
definitely not
complete
accurate.
lack of sabotage.
Yeah.
There's no wheels within wheels.
Yeah, the other Dune game is much more wheels within wheels, and I would like to play it at some point, but it's also the kind of game where we need a full player count to really make it pop. So that's a little difficult to put together. But maybe someday.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
Maybe someday I'll get to that.
You know, speaking of games that need a full player count to actually pop with, I'm going to speak on this next one. This is a game that David bought not too long ago. We played a little bit back in, was it November?
It was like that Thanksgiving time because we decided to hang out together for Thanksgiving.
This is the last time we played this game. It's back in Thanksgiving, and we played it with my fiance, her sister, and then David and I. And it's called King's Dilemma. So King's Dilemma is similar in the sense that it is a kind of campaign legacy game where the effects of previous games affect the current game. And it is a very political game. You're not playing together, you're playing against each other all the time, but you also have your own like selfish desires that you want to push. So, you know, every game you're going to have something that you want to do to be able to further your own goals and further the faction's goals. And it's a very role play heavy game if you really want it to be, because that's what we did.
We tried to do.
Yeah, we tried to do, because I'm not going to name any names, but my fiance's sister was not very into the aspects of that. She mostly reclused herself and just kind of did her own thing, not doing any of the politicking part. So the three of us, my fiance, David, myself, we had a great time playing the game, except for her. She kind of like bogged down the entire experience because she wasn't voting, she wasn't doing any of the politicking, she was just getting money and doing her own thing. And it was frustrating to say the least, because we tried to draw her in, but she just wasn't playing ball, and it was very, very frustrating. But this game, you get the right group of people, fantastic.
Yeah,
like we could play it, and we could play it for hours and have a great time with it and not realize just how many times we played it through.
Sure, I think actually this game would be kind of perfect for you, because it's basically like, this is like the truest Game of Thrones board game that's ever existed, where it's literally just political maneuvering and posturing and grandiose statements that ultimately mean nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, so, that's perfect for me.
Yeah.
Like,
so I would like to try this game from the start all over again, just with a group of players who actually want to play it, as opposed to a wet blanket, ostensibly.
I agree. Honestly, I'd love to try again with this one, and it'll be worth it, I believe.
It's just hard to reset, so
yeah. So we're kind of stuck with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a great game, and it has a lot of interesting choices you can make, and every choice affects the next game. And I don't like to go into spoilers for these types of games, but you know, it's simply about voting and putting your own priorities forward to try to get them ahead. And sometimes your priorities are going to clash with another player's priorities, so it's got to be convincing that one person that's technically a neutral party to vote with you. It's a very intriguing type of politicking method. So I highly recommend this game for people that are into that kind of thing. If you feel like you're a good politician and you can talk your way through any scenario, this is a perfect game for you.
All right. While we're on the subject, go ahead, Sherry.
I can get into this next one because we've all played this next one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so in, what do you say? Like, I want to say like around December, is when we played this, or was this November?
First time.
It may have been
the first.
It may have been New Year's. I think New Year's Eve was like when the first time we tried it.
Yeah, because it was my Secret Santa gift to you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this game is a cooperative has cooperative play style, but everyone's working together as a team, which sometimes this game adds just enough flavor to
To make it so you're not.
Make it so you're not. So this game is called Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. It is a campaign-based story where each player plays a role. So you typically want to do it with well, you can run it with 2 people, you can run it with 3 people, but to get to understand the full scope, 4 players is probably, I would say, the best way to play this. Would you guys not agree?
I agree.
I'll always run this with 4 every time.
Yeah.
It sets up different, so it's kind of like, I think about it, it's a lot like D&D, but with a little bit more limited options, but you have a lot more flexibility in those options. If I can do this action, then this action, or this top and then bottom, and then just how you're working together to get the most out of your build. For example, I call myself the Love Bomber, which is I'm the demolitionist. So I get in, I punch things, and I run away. Versus Eli is the big pew pew man.
I cast spells and heal people. Every player has their own role, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has their own role, but also their own individual strategies. I think really makes the game it works with kind of any way you want to play it. Granted, there's times where you can get into bad situations or good situations, but it depends on what exactly you're doing. But if you're playing it right, it's pretty fun. When I got 1720 XP before we got XP for a mission.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So the game is it's very card driven. That's a dungeon crawler, like Sherry mentioned, is where you're basically going around, you're doing objectives, and you're killing enemies and collecting the loot, and just going through a kind of basic campaign. Jaws of the Lion is a kind of a basic version of the much bigger Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, which are games that, for the record, Sherry, feature 95 plus scenarios each, with almost 20 unlockable classes.
There's some good deals on Frosthaven right now, and that's with the really big box with the minifigs in there. There's some good deals on that I almost bought the other day.
Oh God!
So
you only bought TI. I don't need you to do more.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I kind of just want that game because I like the I like the Gloomhaven formula, but I also like kind of the environment of what Frosthaven would be. It seems kind of super interesting to me.
Yeah, those games are much more rules heavy and crunchy than Jaws of the Lion is, which is a very simplified game. But with that said, it's $40 for 25 missions that you're gonna enjoy. The classes are varied and different, and they fill the standard archetypical role of here's our deep single target damage, here's our DPS, here's our tank, here's our support guy. But they do it in such interesting ways that it doesn't feel like you're doing that anymore. My character is the Hatchet Man who throws his axe at people. That's all well and good, but I have to go and pick the axe up now if I want to do it again.
Yep.
Yeah, and you don't. At least I know between the two of us, David and myself, it sometimes feels like we're both outputting a ton of damage, because I think my character is designed to basically I'm basically kind of like a wall breaker, where I can do a lot of for very specific things, I can do ton damage, versus other times where I'm okay, this is just an average amount of damage. But sometimes you're keeping up with me in my DPS, which is pretty cool, and sometimes it's where I'm more of a support, where I'm basically, my sole goal is to just destroy objects around, where it's I'm gonna clear the path so everyone has the most accessible route to get to their goals.
Yeah, you also have higher mobility than I do, so you're able to get in and out much easier, whereas I have to kind of stay in the back line or else I get murdered.
Yeah, my role is definitely one of the support class. I manipulate enemies on the battlefield, I heal people, I add status effects, I add cards that make it harder for enemies to hit. It's for me, I typically play support characters when I do these types of games, but I also love playing the frontline characters, so I usually typically will play the frontline characters more than the support. So this is kind of a scratching an itch that I haven't had for a long time.
Yeah.
So honestly, just need to play it more.
I love Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I think it's the perfect introduction to this formula. it's meaty enough to where if you have played Gloomhaven before, you'll still get plenty out of it. And yeah, I mean, it's $40 on Amazon right now.
Yeah,
if you haven't bought this game, buy this game. Seriously.
Yep.
And you will have hours of fun. You don't even need to buy base Gloomhaven. Although still buy base Gloomhaven, I guess. I don't know.
This is
if you like it.
This is what you buy if you're not sure if you're going to like the base Gloomhaven. Figure this out first, and if you like this, go buy the base Gloomhaven
and Frosthaven.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, spend $400.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna buy Frosthaven sometime soon. I have a big paycheck coming, so.
Oh boy.
So I'll have 2 meaty games ready for you guys.
Oh boy.
My last one on the list here is just a quick hitter because neither of you guys have played this one yet. It's a game that's along the same lines of Jaws of the Lion, where it's it's a campaign style game and it's cooperative. You can do a little bit of role play, whatever you really want to do. But instead of it being card reliant like Gloomhaven is, this is more dice reliant, so it can get a little more frustrating to play. It's called SS Vanguard. So the sci-fi setting of this, you're in space. And at least for where we're at right now, we're the campaign's set on a Dyson sphere, and you're trying to go deeper into the Dyson sphere to figure out some mystery that's happening. That's the most I know right now, because obviously it's a campaign style game. I don't know anything beyond what I already have learned, but it plays very similar to Gloomhaven in the sense that you are trying to cooperate, and it's kind of similar. Each player has their own roles. The differences of this game, though, are instead of like in Gloomhaven, where you can, it's like a dungeon crawl, this is more around like tasks and finishing parts of the mission that you're on to be able to go on to the next mission. So you're assigned something at the start of each game that you play, where it's going to say, fix this part of the ship, destroy this part of an enemy thing, do this, all these variety of things. And you have to do it within a certain amount of time, because the game gives you a time limit for certain aspects of it, where it's going to say you have 5 turns to do this, otherwise this will happen. So it's kind of like you're being put under pressure to finish these things in a certain amount of time, and you only have a certain number of actions to get them done in. So it makes for a lot of interesting gameplay. You have to also kind of like talk with each other and be like, my dice can do this, I have this ability, I can do this, I can move here faster than you can, so let me move here, and then I will do this task instead. It's a whole like slew of strategy, and just the big part of this game is communication. I will like straight up tell you that right now. Communicate what you're able to do, what you're going to do, so that way you're not wasting the turns of other people.
Sounds like we need to do that in Gloomhaven.
Well, we can't. It's explicitly not allowed.
Yeah.
So we cheat. I'm joking.
Sherry, would you like to... Actually, no, Claw.
Yeah. It's,
David, would you like to wrap us up on this one?
The last game that I have to discuss is a game that lives in all of our hearts in infamy for many reasons. Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, yeah.
The board game.
Never seen the series, but the board game's fun.
The game is very fun, but it's probably the most time we've ever thrown out slurs during a board game. And when I say that, I don't mean like, I'm saying things like, oh, the Cylon God, yeah, he's a toaster. Like, he's a complete toaster. We just, it always devolves into name calling and just general.
Yeah, it's not racial slurs, it's straight up just like in-universe slurs.
Well,
big toaster hours.
Yeah, Sherry, you got something against toasters, man?
Hey, they cook my bread easily.
That sounds like something a toaster would say.
Yeah, it's definitely some toaster language that I'm hearing right now. See, this is what kind of turns into, is that like everything can be used as a weapon and accusation against somebody that we want to throw under the bus or we actually believe is a traitor. It's probably provoked the most direct reactions out of all of us.
Oh, yeah. Baseless accusations are the best.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is when everyone starts accusing each other and we all realize no one was the Cylon.
At least not initially.
Yeah, not initially. So the core gameplay mechanics of this game are centered around cards. There's a couple dice reliant things, but for the most part, it's about cards you have in your hand.
It's a lot like Shadows over Camelot, but there's more moving pieces, more complexity, and therefore more opportunities for sabotage.
Yes, and more opportunities for failure as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, in my opinion, this is probably like one of my favorite games that we play when it comes to like the introduction to board games that we had, because we started playing this back in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like we showed up. You showed up at my apartment one day with this, and I was like, "What the hell is this? I've never seen Battlestar Galactica." And you just said trust, and we played it, and God, was it a blast!
Yeah, I said trust, and you trusted, and
I was the Cylon,
and
I played it completely
and
wrong.
you were rewarded by me. You were not rewarded by Sherry.
Yep. Yeah, the game overall, I'd say, is probably even with like a bad playgroup. Like when I say bad, it's like quote unquote bad playgroup. It can still be an entertaining time. So many interesting stories have happened from this, such as David, being the admiral, going for a power move and becoming the admiral president.
But I was playing as the guy who was like, okay, I can immediately make the president the admiral. So I managed to become elected president and then force myself into the admiralty in a blatant and naked power grab
by bringing the fucking president.
Yep.
I was the president that game.
Yep. I had you brigged. No, Casey was the president that game.
Oh, for that game, but there was one time where you did that same exact move where I was the president.
But I'm pretty sure I was a Cylon that game. I wasn't a Cylon when I usurped both.
You weren't a Cylon that one either. That was the game that Sherry was a Cylon.
All right.
For the rest of the game, I was untrusting of you until we found out Sherry was the Cylon.
Yeah, I had my reasons.
I was doing so well until I was found out.
Yeah, I had my reasons, okay? I always have. If I usurp power from you, I always have my reasons.
I mean, I was doing a good job convincing you, Eli, that David was the...
I mean, my actions kind of spoke for themselves, but you didn't know how I played.
Correct.
Which is, I always make naked power grabs.
Yep. And honestly, it made for a more interesting story, and I appreciate that. That and in the moment, it was frustrating, but then looking back and like post, so long ago, such an entertaining story to be able to tell. And for some reason, like whenever you play, you're expected when you play this game that the humans are going to lose most times because there's so many odds stacked against them. And it's about overcoming those odds to try to win. But for some reason, whenever David and I are both humans, most of the time we win.
Yeah, it's very strange.
But if one of us is a Cylon, the odds get stacked very, very heavy against us.
Well, it's because there's so much hidden information in that game. Which it's like, unlike Shadows over Camelot, which is like, there is a way to deduce and figure out who is the traitor. It's because of most of the information is hidden. It's very difficult to deduce until you're like, oh, and it's usually too late by the time you figure out like, oh God, he's locked himself in a corner and he's untouchable and he's the president and admiral and he's the Cylon.
Yeah.
I need to become a Cylon more. I don't feel like I get to be traitor enough in these kinds of games, unfortunately.
Weirdly enough, I'm usually the traitor in those games.
Yeah, it happens a lot with you. I don't get it. It happens a ton with Eli's fiance as well.
Yeah.
Like
she tries not to be obvious, but like the bad part about us is that her and I know each other so well is that if one of us is a traitor in one of these games, we usually know it right away.
Hey, you two know right away. I figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm usually a pretty good traitor.
They're a traitor.
Yeah, Sherry's probably the best one out of all of us, out of obfuscating his intentions if he's evil.
Yes.
Yes. Because I'm a little too over the top.
Right.
But I prefer to be over the top. It's more fun that way.
I find your lack of nuance disturbing.
Yeah, honestly, like Battlestar is a blast, and I cannot get enough of it when we play it. Like all these games that we talked about today, I love playing all these games. So like,
I want to play these with you guys. We need to make a plan.
Like whenever we decide to play these games on a given weekend, it's always a blast because we dedicate the whole weekend to it. We're like We might go out to get some drinks, but we're not going to stay out late because we want to come back and play board games.
Yep.
Like, it may seem like we're lame, and we're all in our mid 20s.
We're like 40% lame, I'd say.
Like, we're in our mid 20s, but this is what we enjoy, and we know we enjoy it. So why deny ourselves this?
Yeah. So Sherry, yeah, next time we get together, you better have that Twilight Imperium in hand.
Yeah.
I'm taking the next 2 weekends off, and I'm taking 3 days to get through our first game. Yeah, so for those who haven't gotten it, I've just bought in Twilight Imperium, and probably soon buying Frosthaven.
Big games.
Big expensive games.
Lots of
I will
figures,
say
lots
there
of
is a good
movement.
there is a good deal on Twilight Imperium right now. It's $130 for it right now, which is a really good price for that beefy of a game.
Always beware when you buy things off Amazon, though, because the quality of those board games varies. We've gotten some really weird, janky pieces from stuff from Amazon, so just be careful. If possible, just like with Magic, always support your local game store, because your local game store, odds are, has some of these board games for sale. And
or there are dedicated board game shops in your neighborhood that you can go to. So you don't even have to, if you don't want the two to meet, you don't have to have them meet.
That is our kind of intro to our board game stuff. We'll probably talk more in depth about some of these board games, like some of the nuances.
I have a feeling we're going to dedicate an entire episode to Twilight Imperium.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to happen.
And
how Twilight Imperium ruined our friendship.
Or we could dedicate a whole podcast to it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just stuff like this. We obviously are very passionate about board games, so we're going to talk a lot about them whenever we can. And we hope that you all enjoy it. Give us a like. Talk about some of your favorite board games in the comments below if you really are keen to that. Follow us on X. We will talk about board games on there eventually. Give some recommendations. And subscribe if you really enjoy the content and you want to see more of this. So, but we'll see you in the next video.
Well, I'm not going to say it. Magic's not dead. We're not playing Magic here. This isn't a Magic channel. What?
That is blatantly untrue.
What gave you that idea?
One of our symbols is part of Norton's head.
Hush, 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 hush.